Hello and welcome back to our gardens. Well, the rain has let up and it's a beautiful day, although it is a little bit humid out here, so I'm trying to stay in the shade. But we are cutting back our peonies. We had a gorgeous peony display just a few weeks ago. They went over quite quickly, and now we're just cutting back all of this kind of crummy looking foliage. So that's what I'm doing. And in today's episode, we'll talk with a local artist who forages for ideas in the Green Mountain State.
I study sculpture, and I've been working on a lot of different projects, specifically drawing influence from agriculture.
And we'll visit a local farm and music venue that really does it all.
We're a commercial kitchen, a bakery, a farm, a sawmill, a world music venue.
Just try to have fun and grow food and nurture community. I don't know, those are the aspirations at least.
So cutting back these peonies is great. It not only gets rid of this scruffy looking old petals, but it also kind of reshapes the plant. And then you can kind of get in there, give it a little bit more airflow. And while you're doing this, you can just kind of clean some of those old petals off of the leaves. Just give it a little refresh. You know, it's put on its show, it's done its thing, and now it's time to just rest. It's time to just rest and recuperate, storing up some energy for next year. So we have all of these staked. We were very responsible this year and staked all of our peonies before they needed it, which is kind of key. We weren't so on top of it with some of our other perennials. So after I cut these back, we're gonna be going through and staking up some of our perennials that kind of flopped over and open during this crazy rainstorm that we just had. Okay, so here are our phlox. They are super beautiful, but we got this crazy rainstorm and it just kind of splayed them all out. So I'm gonna come in here and just kind of prop them up a little bit so that while we still have these beautiful blooms, we can really appreciate them in all their glory. So I have these two small stakes. I'm gonna do one on this side and one coming from the back, just almost gathering them like a little bouquet of flowers. Oh, you can smell it. It smells so good. Okay, I'm just gonna go to the other side. Okay, so we have had these phlox in the ground for a few seasons now. I think this is their leap year. So first year they sleep, second year they creep, third year they leap. That's kind of how you look at your herbaceous perennials in terms of their habit, how they're gonna perform that year. And these are looking fantastic. So I really love cottage gardening. This is a cottage garden. I'm really inspired by English gardens and their kind of habit of creating a higgledy-piggledy look with all kinds of lush, rich, verdant borders with tons of different structures and shapes and having a very full kind of garden look. But sometimes that can look a little bit messy if you're not careful about it. So one way to kind of make it look a little bit more intentional, I guess, is to have a repetition of different plants. So I have these phlox here. I have other phlox that are the same color that are repeated throughout the borders. And I do this with all of the different perennials. With the annuals, I like to play around, have a little bit of a pop of color here and there. And I like mixing both ornamentals and edibles because edibles are beautiful. So when you're trying to kind of design a border, there are a few things to keep in mind. When you're doing this, it's almost like, for me, it's like painting with living color. So as you do that, you want to kind of think about stretching a canvas upon which you can paint. And the way that I've done that here is by inviting in some really beautiful structure. The structure that I have here is not only just providing a beautiful backdrop, but it's also great because it provides winter interest, spring interest, and it's a really beautiful one that can handle sun and shade, which is what these borders get. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so we've dug our hole here, pulled out a bunch of rocks and stones with our pickaxe, and now I'm gonna be planting this beautiful shrub. So this is one of my favorite shrubs. It might be one of my favorite plants. This is an ivory halo dogwood. So you might have heard of a red twig dogwood. It has beautiful, vibrant, kind of burgundy like twigs in the winter time. And that's just a gorgeous thing to look out at, especially if you have all kinds of different evergreens that kind of play off of it. It's so beautiful. And then the color of it in the season is so nice. It's sort of a cool green, almost like a sagey green. And then it has, as the name would suggest, this sort of a halo of ivory around each one of the leaves. It's really stunning. Now this one is kind of unhappy with us for not planting it sooner because it's very hot right now and we've had a few really hot days. So really need to get this in the ground. But all throughout these borders, we have this continuation of the ivory halo dogwoods. And then, like I said, you can kind of paint with color in front of those because they have a really light, bright, kind of shimmery, they kind of glow in the darker corners or in the back of the border. And then you kind of paint with the colors in front of those. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this straight in the hole. Now we've dug a pretty big hole, pretty wide, and I've put some of our garden compost in there. So I'm just gonna pop this in the hole and make sure that it's level. So the soil level of the pot is level with the soil outside of the pot. Well, there is still a lot more to do in the garden, but first, I want to take you over to a community farm that we visited earlier this year.
My name is Oliver, and my role is maybe to, I guess, to have ideas and manifest them, and try to keep things rolling as smooth as possible. Try to, embrace the chaos, but also tame it, and just try to have fun and grow food and nurture community. I don't know, those are the aspirations at least. So when my dad bought the farm in, I think, 72, he named it Earth, Sky, Time, which is actually the Greek cosmogony, like the creation story. Mother Earth and Father Sky, and their son is Cronus, time. And it relates to my dad's, understanding of creativity and the human unconscious. And I always sort of like it. It really encompasses a lot of the sort of the fundamental aspects of what we're doing. The earth, we're working the ground, everything is sort of coming, whether it's the wood for the timber frames or the wheat or the vegetables, it's all sort of coming from the earth. And obviously time is of the essence, right? We're working together and how we're spending our time. And the sky, that's what else is there? We're solar powered, I guess you would say. On a superficial level, Earth, Sky, Time makes a lot of sense. And then my dad's got a more conceptual background to it, but it resonated, and so we stuck with it. Yeah, but that sign's been there since, at this point, like 50 years or something. Yeah.
I'm Bonnie Levis. What is my role here? I'm like the housewife of a really funny, ridiculous house, I guess. We sell a bunch of things. So we're a commercial kitchen, a bakery, a farm, sawmill, a world music venue, and I guess, yeah, that kind of sums it up. So we have a lot of full-time businesses cranking from this one space.
It's not really an extremely capitalist motivated endeavor. We're trying to live and trying to be sustainable as a community. But what that means is that we're able to, keep doing what we're doing and enjoy it. So our mission, I guess, is to survive and thrive and have a good time with our family and be productive and be a part of the community, which we have our, our family and the people that live with us. And then, and a little bit broader, it's like maybe the area around town where we're feeding people and also putting on, these music events and just basically being a resource. And then in a broader way, people come from farther fields to work with us and learn about how to do some of the things that we're doing. And that's a meaningful part of it as well.
This is our greenhouse, our propagation house. We call it Sun Gold. So a lot of the original greenhouses are named after varieties of tomatoes that we really love. We mix our own potting mix, and then these are all little soil blocks that we start each seed in. And it's really kind of awesome because we don't do a lot of plastic plugs. These make really good transplants because on the bottom they're getting air over there, so they don't get root bound. They just kind of stop growing when they hit air. We don't do very many direct seeded crops. We're a pretty weedy farm, so we like to start things big with a chance to compete with the weeds. We know who we are, so we've evolved.
In maybe 2004, 2005, around that time, Bonnie and I moved here and started farming and making food and built greenhouses and built a bakery in 2011 and just expanded, building new infrastructure, acquiring some adjacent properties like where we are here over the years since then. So we've been at it now for 20 years, which went by in the blink of an eye, but you can get a lot done in 20 years. It's a pretty long time in the scheme of, human life. That's a good chunk of our life has been spent doing this.
It's a pretty dynamic and interesting place to live and work, and it takes work to make it flow.
People powered that's what we say. But I think we're lucky to be where we are and have a lot of gratitude for that.
We wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun, so it must be fun. Keep doing it.
Well, they sure are doing some cool stuff over there. And they mentioned Sun Gold tomatoes, which is my favorite tomato. So, girl after my own heart. So we spoke last episode about creating another one of these tomato structures, and we did it. So let me show you how. So here is the one that we built. It's, I don't know, maybe 7 feet tall. And this is what you're gonna need. You're gonna need some twine. However many plants you have, tomato plants, that's how many pieces of twine you're gonna want. And you wanna do it maybe 2 feet or so longer than the actual structure is high. And that way you can tie them off and then even wrap them around if they get a little bit loose. So you wanna ensure that you have really strong twine because this is what's gonna be holding up these very heavy, indeterminate, which means they keep on growing, tomatoes all season long. So you're gonna plant these tomatoes inside of a hole. You plant them a little bit deep, and you're actually going to bury the twine underneath the root ball of the tomato itself. And you want to tie the other end of that twine to the top of the structure. So for the structure itself, since we already had these beds in place, we just moved some of these stones. I dug a few really deep holes and found some tall kind of branches. Some of these are small trees from the property, and then bury them in the ground, creating kind of an X at the top so that you can lay your crossbar on top of that X on either side. Then you take some rope and just ensure that it's secured nice and safely inside of that little X that you've created. So once your structure is in place, then get your tomatoes in there and wind them up. And winding the tomatoes up the twine is something that you have to do consistently through the season. So that's actually why I've come out to the vegetable patch. This is one of our chores today, is just winding these tomatoes up as they grow. And because we've had so much rain and it's been so hot, which the plants are loving, it's a great, great time to come over here and do this because they're growing like crazy. We use natural elements from around the property to build our structures, but Sloan Atwood Pirie uses nature in a totally different way.
I study sculpture, and I've been working on a lot of different projects, specifically drawing influence from agriculture or agricultural practices, both in Vermont, sort of local practices, but also more industrial scale models of agriculture. My name is Sloan Atwood Pirie, and I'm an artist working between southern Vermont and Brooklyn. I moved from Los Angeles to Vermont with my family when I was going into high school, and I went to high school in Manchester, Vermont. And while I was graduating, I was set to graduate in 2020, and COVID happened, so I took a gap year and I moved to Brooklyn to pursue art, and now I go to Pratt Institute. Foraging is a huge part of my practice, especially being between Vermont, southern Vermont, and Brooklyn. I come back for the summers and for all my holidays from school. And I like to say that Vermont is a place where I do my gathering, both of ideas and of materials. So I spend a lot of time hiking, I spend a lot of time walking around my family's house, and I gather really whatever catches my interest and is available to take without destroying the landscape. And I'm very conscious of that. And so I've been gathering pine needles and most recently dandelion stems. They have an amazing smell once they're dry, and I was thinking about tincturing them. And they also act as cordage once they're dried, and you can re-wet them and make cordage, and you can weave them. And that's an interest of mine that I've sort of started getting into, is weaving. This is my favorite hat in the whole world. I put it on because whenever I go foraging or I'm in my element, I wear this hat, and my mom always jokes that I'm ready if I'm in this hat. And it sort of does. It sort of makes me feel like I'm a scientist or something. Right now I'm working on a silk-screened recipe book. I'm interested in working between art and agriculture, and I think recipes are a really beautiful place for that. It acts as a history of families, of land, and of cooking, of course. So the recipe book drew inspiration from an abandoned cabin that's near my family's home, and it looks like someone just up and left. We're not sure who the property belongs to exactly, and I was looking through the window and there was an abandoned kitchen, and it was all of these materials that people had left behind. There were pots, there were cookbooks, there was an open fridge, and I took some images of it and I silk screened them, and I created a recipe book called Recipes from an Abandoned Kitchen. Recipes only last as long as the kitchen that they were made in. Once they're passed down, they're going to be made in new ways and reiterated. Recipes are a really beautiful way to reconnect with food and with landscapes and with agriculture. The cookbook acts as an archive of my own recipes for myself, something that I can look on when I'm older. It's really a personal project, and I'm really excited about it. This past year, I started to realize that I wanted to spend more time in the kitchen than in the studio, and I started to understand that they were one and the same, and that my interactions with food was very similar to my interactions with non-food materials, and they started to merge. So I've been working a lot with food materials, trying to make them archival and working them into my sculpture. So I've been making doughs made from cornstarch. I've been blowing sugar in a similar way that you would blow glass. I've used those materials in contrast or paired with more industrial materials like steel, wood, tubing, and that contrast, I think, creates a really nice space to question, what is natural and what is not. Because of course, I draw inspiration from the natural world, but I also am curious about the delineation we make between what we consider nature and human. I'm interested in the history of toolmaking and toolmaking practices. I'm interested in things being ergonomic and fitting to the body. that's specific to a person that might be using the tool. Although the saw is not fully functional, it's a connection between your body and a tool that can be used for a lot of destruction, which there seems to be a separation with now with mechanized logging practices and industries. And that's something I'm interested in sort of bridging more. So I did a residency last summer at Salem Artworks. It was for New York and Vermont residents, and I made the pegboard that's behind me with seed pods that I gathered from that area. And so the piece's title is the coordinates of Saw's location. I'm interested in seed pods as sort of innate natural sculptures, and I think viewing them as tools, which is something that humans have done for a long time. I'm interested in seed sovereignty and the collection of seeds, and it's pretty interesting to me how humans have sort of manipulated them to do our bidding over time, either making plants more profitable or larger, and usually those go hand in hand. Behind me, there's also some embroidery that I've done that is faux moss. So it's embroidery using cotton and other materials that is meant to mimic moss on a rock. And this is something that I've been doing for a long time. I did a clothing collection, and it's also something that I've led a workshop in. Most recently at Southern Vermont Art Center, I did a workshop called Embroidering Moss. And it was really, really fun. We had a bunch of people, mostly beginners, doing embroidery and using it as a way to do visible mending on pre-existing clothing or bags, but also as a way to sort of bridge the gap between interior and exterior spaces. One piece called Perimeter is a project I did about half a year ago. I used a pesticide sprayer to spray the perimeter of sort of a white wall gallery space with an algae called spirulina, and I retraced the perimeter once a day. It left sort of like a green marking along the wall, and with that piece I was thinking about my time in Vermont and the delineation of property lines, translating that to urban areas and suburban areas and what the difference is there. And I was also interested in using a pesticide sprayer as something that can be used for good, for fertilizers, but also sort of unnecessarily to kill, the microbiota of the soil and any sort of native insects or, flora or fauna that might be around. And especially in Vermont, it seems like such a juxtaposition to the landscape, and the green could connote something that is good for the surroundings or could be bad and damaging. So that was something that I was interested in while working on that piece. Yeah, I definitely don't think I'm an expert by any means, and I, like to don my hat, so to speak, and pretend I am, but I think it is all about, for me, art is a way to explore topics that I'm interested in without, getting a degree in something necessarily, and exploring it from a lens that I think is of curiosity as opposed to scrutiny. And that's something that I find a lot of freedom in. So I have a website. It's my full name, sloanatwoodpirie.com. And I also have an Instagram, although I don't post super often. It's my name, Sloan, and then with an E and then a bunch of R's. So it's Sloaner. So you can find me there.
Well, we've had to come underneath the porch to get out of the rain. We've been having these gully washers where the sky opens up and the rain starts pouring down. But it's quite cozy here on the porch, and I would love to put together a little container. So I've been dreaming about this all winter, actually, putting together a really beautiful herb container in the same way you would a beautiful annual container. So we are going to start by doing a thriller or a pillar in the center. And we have this here. This is a lemon verbena. The leaves are highly aromatic, really lovely. And I dried mine last year, and then I use it for teas throughout the winter, which is really nice. So this is a really nice centerpiece here. It's really fun to sort of explore different heights and textures. You know, Sloan, who we just met and spoke with, is such a talented artist and has that artistic eye. And I think you can kind of play around with using different shapes and textures to create a kind of artistry in your containers. And this is a really fun way to do it because you can eat everything in the container. This one is a shisho red, also called a perilla. It's got edible leaves and flowers, and this is fantastic for adding to salads and things like that. I've never grown it, but I'm really excited. And I thought, I love using coleus in arrangements and annual containers and things like that. So I thought this would be kind of a nice substitute for that. So we have our pillar, our filler, and now let's add in some spillers. This is going to be our woolly thyme, and this is so lovely. I've grown this before. It's just fantastic. It grows like mad, and I think it's beautiful, just kind of gently cascading over the edge of a pot. So next up we have some chives. So I thought these would be really fun, almost like a grassy texture in there. Chives are so lovely to cook with. You know, you can bake with them as well, but also because chives have really beautiful flowers. So I thought that might be nice. Okay, so I've moved these around just a little bit. And up next we have this beautiful tricolor sage. So this is a perennial, as are a lot of these, and so they'll come back year on year. This is a zone 4. So where we are here, this will come back for us. And isn't that stunning? It's very similar to our ivory halo that we were looking at earlier. So I really like that. And I'm gonna tuck this one in here between the woolly thyme and our chives. And next up, I'm gonna put my gloves on because we have a rue. And here it says, care, best if planted in gritty, sharply draining soil. Caution, severely toxic to skin with sunlight. That's really, really helpful. So here's our rue. It's got beautiful leaves. They're almost like, they look like little splats of paint. So I think those are really, really pretty. And it's a sort of glaucous blue-green color. I think this is gonna do it. So I have my little gloves on and I'm gonna go ahead and plant these up. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you next time here on Our Garden.